The Buck 119. Well, here's the one that I use, and this is the first Buck 119 that I owned. Geez, I want to say I purchased this knife about, I've had it with me now for maybe 5 or 6 years. I forgot the exact date. And as I stated, this is with the Coca-Cola diamond wood and brass. This knife has done it all and will continue to do it all for me. It really is a lovely user knife. And of course, you can collect the knives too. There is great consistency with Buck products from what I can tell, from what I have purchased. There is good quality control. So undoubtedly, it appears that you can order this knife sight unseen and you won't be disappointed. I'm sure that there's the lemons that are out there floating around. It happens with any product. So this is mine here, and this is the sheath. And in the sheath is a plastic insert and a weep hole in the bottom. The sheath has been fine. I wish this leather strap was a bit thicker. You do get some migration on the belt in terms of the knife being pointed in a different direction, as well as hanging, sliding around. But that part doesn't bother me. But I'd rather the point not be facing forward or backwards. But for what it is, the sheath does work very well. Great closure, and with that button facing the direction that it does, for right-handed carry, you don't have to worry about if you're busting some brush and having anything swiping by to open your knife. This will not retain the sheath without that closure. All right, there's like a tiny little bit of initial friction that sort of holds the knife in there, but that's it. Some shaking, the knife will come out. Not too bad, but this is the other aspect with this knife, is if you are going through. Excuse me there. If you are going through, trying to stalk and do different things, sometimes a little bit of a rattle can be heard over some leaf litter or, things like that, and you can hear it in there. That's the knife hitting the plastic sheath. So, that's very, very minor, and it can be fixed. There are a multitude of aftermarket sheaths for this knife. This knife is very, very popular. So this is another one, and this is another variation of the Buck 119, and this is the Buck 119 Brahma. It's got the stacked leather and micarta. This knife here has a wicked 90 spine. This knife I had given to my father as a gift in 2015. I asked if I could borrow it just for this review so I could show you his buck knife. Same thing, really, same thing. We're talking same blade, just a different appearance. Here is a 75th anniversary buck. Once again, same thing, except this is the phenolic resin. I do believe that the phenolic resin is the same material as what they would make bowling balls out of. Don't quote me on that, but I have seen that around quite a bit. probably would be easy to look up. And this just purchased today for a friend of mine who did some mechanic work free of charge to me. I just purchased this here. You're straight up buck 119. Of course, there's no anniversary date or anything like that on there. So as you can see here, I'll try to get all of these in. There we go, 4 buck knives. All right. As you can see, one of the differences, you can see some variations in the fuller here. And as I had stated before, some people have mixed emotions about the fuller. There's that whole blood groove thing people talk about where, you know, the suction of the blade upon withdrawing from whatever you're stabbing, live meat, is, you know, this fuller, in my belief, is people use it to affect the balance of the knife. You know, it allows you to use a thicker steel and take some weight off. And it is also used in terms of increasing the knife's integrity. By integrity, I mean when you think of an I-beam, the shape of the I-beam adds strength to it. And that's what its purpose is for as well. It's found mostly in swords of the past. Some people don't think it belongs on a knife, you know, under 8 or 9 inches. It doesn't really bother me much. Marbles has a, it might be their ideal. I can't quite recall. Don't quote me on that either. Matter of fact, don't quote me on anything I say. But the fuller on that knife is actually quite large. As I said, this knife was not sharpened or stropped, honed in any manner. And it went into this review being of just, you know, your average user sharpness. I didn't get the thing, you know, hair popping beforehand. Having said that, the knife virtually is pretty much hair popping most of the time, and that's due to this phenomenal geometry. And as I've stated before, I'll state it again, geometry determines the functionality of the heat treatment of the steel. So we've got a great cutting geometry, which means we have easy sharpenability because, you know, there's not much steel to remove to get this knife back to wicked sharp. So in the field, ceramic rods, those things, a couple licks on each side, and you're good to go. That's a nice feature. So on top of that, we have a marvelous heat treatment, which Buck is known for heating the 420 HC, high carbon, stainless. And so with the good heat treatment, it allows you know, that geometry to be able to happen. If the heat treatment was poor, you would not be able to support such a aggressive grind here. And then last is the steel. The steel matters last, right? I mean, we can take a ball of unobtainium, you know, or whatever it is, the greatest super steel of the time, but if it's shaped like a ball, it won't cut you. Yet you could take a piece of paper and cut your flesh, and it's all because geometry. Geometry does the work. And so that's what we're looking for whenever we're people like us are going out and woods bumming and doing your campcraft, bushcraft, hunting, anything really. You're looking at that geometry. Make sure that geometry lines up with what you're doing. As I said, the knife has been around since the early 1940s, virtually unchanged. Buck did go through the different steels. I believe there at one point had used 440C. Of course, heat treated well. They're also available, as I said, too, in a couple different steels. You can get these knives. but fantastic. The grip really holds on. Excuse me, makes it easier to hold on, I should say. So we'll compare it to the, you know, like we're saying here, the real heavy Scandinavian ground knife. You see how much steel has to be removed. This is what we're talking about. How much steel has to be removed to maintain this cutting edge, as opposed to this little bit. So if you have any type of sharpening media that's diamond impregnated, like your DC4 stone, that style, you will wear through that product much quicker because you're sharpening that much more steel. We can see here that geometry really is not going to work for this knife when it comes to many tasks. Of course, it will baton. And it will bore holes very nice. The tip is robust, and we can get a comparison. So look at the thickness of this Buck 119 versus woodlore clone. Yet we have a knife, being the Buck 119, that slices better, pretty much does everything better, in my opinion, for how I do things out there in the woods. Your mileage may vary, so to speak, but mine, like I said, I want something. I want to be able to cut some tomatoes. I want to be able to cut saplings. I want to be able to split some kindling. I want to be able to do everything, really. And sometimes these thick Scandinavian ground knives do fall short. I don't believe that the Scandinavian grind was meant to be on a knife definitely any thicker than 1/8 of an inch. And in my opinion, I wouldn't want to go over 3/32 with a Scandinavian ground knife. But so, as I said, the guard, I used to think that more so when this bushcraft really began to take off, it became popularized. It was said that, you know, knives with guards can't be used and so on and so forth. They impede any type of craft that you're doing, any type of, I don't really buy that. I haven't had a problem with this knife. You work around it. The guard is milled in a way where it does not really create any problems in terms of creating hot spots or hurting your hand. And as I have said before, I can make feather sticks with a hatchet or a double bit axe, and it's far less user-friendly for that than a knife would be. So having my hand a, half an inch, we'll just say, away from whatever I'm cutting is not going to matter to me either. All right. If I'm carving something so fine or that it involves such craft and expertise, usually the belt knife isn't the answer anyways. Usually a more specialized knife would be. This knife will fillet fish. This knife will debone, separate large game, quarter large game. There's a reason why this knife is quite popular. As I've said too, it's a great thing to be able to buy this knife in a hardware store, sporting goods store, some department stores even. It's a great thing. You can go anywhere and buy the same knife you have at home. So you lose your luggage on a hunting trip, no fear. Try to get to a Walmart, which isn't hard if you live in the United States. Try to get there and get yourself another knife. You don't have to relearn anything or try to discover how to use a new knife out in the field without a chance to familiarize yourself with it. You will already have been familiar with it because you'll have been using it for years. The knife does not readily throw a spark with rock. I have demonstrated that in another video. It will spark, but not reliably at all. So I would not look at this as, to be lighting char cloth or tinder fungus or anything like that. Myself, I say time and time again, I roll with a system, and this here being my Case Stockman This will throw a spark like an angle grinder really on steel. It sparks a shower off this thing. So in the off chance that I need to do something like that, this knife here will perform. And any axe I usually have on me as well is able to perform that. Buck 119, you can check. I'm not familiar with all about how to date the Buck 119, but much of it is based on the positioning of the stamp here on the Ricasso. Beautiful knife. I have not cleaned it or anything since the series on it, but it shines up well. A cutting machine right here, folks. A cutting machine. Wonderful, wonderful tip on this knife. As I said, the whole thing does scream quality. And I just bought that knife there. It's not a lot of money. It is not a lot of money. For what you get, it is a heck of a deal. And of course, the whole their warranty is no joke either. I have not had to use it, but in all the reading and discussion I've had about different knives, the Buck knife warranty seems to beat all of them. No questions asked. Fix the product you send back, or most times a brand new product. But usually there's no fuss involved in people trying to legitimately return a product. Well, I hope you enjoyed this series. We'll have more hunting knives for Bushcraft, and amongst, of course, there'll be other videos as well. Thank you very, very much for watching. Take care.